Assalamu alaikum. Today's topic is the Quran as a source of Islamic law. As a source of Islamic law, the Quran is the foundation of Islamic law. In other words, all of the laws in Islam are based on the Quran. The Quran is a primary and reliable source of Islamic law. The Quran has guidance on various aspects of life, and it is the final divine law. As previous divine laws came in the Torah, in the Injil, the Bible, and the Old Testaments, and then the final divine law came in the Quran, and it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to all mankind. Now, how do we know that we are allowed to use the Quran as a source of Islamic law? Who gives us the authority? Allah instructs us to use the Quran for judgment in law. As it is mentioned in the Quran, وَمَن لَّمْ يَحْكُم بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And those who do not judge by what Allah has revealed are truly the disbelievers. So Allah has ordered us to judge via the Quran. Then Allah further states in the Quran, أَحْكُم بَيْنَهُم بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُم. Judge between them, O Prophet, by what Allah has revealed, and do not follow their desires. In other words, our laws and our rules and regulations are not going to be based on somebody's desires. It's going to be based on the law of the Quran, what Allah has revealed to the Prophet. Authenticity of the Quran. Allah assures the authenticity of the Quran to those who are Allah conscious. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This is the book, there is no doubt about it. A guide for those who are mindful of Allah, who are Allah conscious. Those who fear Allah, they will find guidance from this book, the Quran. Because many researchers who do not belong to Islam have researched on the book, and if guidance was obtained by just reading a book, then they would have found guidance. But Allah says guidance is obtained by those who are muttaqeen. Quran for jurisprudence, Quran for Islamic law, Quran for jurisprudence, Islamic law, legal thinking, legislation, Islamic legislation, Sharia law, Hudud law, they all mean the same thing. So you could get a question in which it is mentioned that how is the Quran used for Islamic jurisprudence, or how is the Quran used for Islamic legislation or Islamic law or legal thinking or Sharia law or anything like that. So the Quran for jurisprudence, Inna anzalna ilayka al-kitaba bil-haqqi li-tahkuma bayna an-nasi bima araka Allah. Indeed, we have sent down the book to you, O Prophet, in truth, to judge between people by means of what Allah has shown you. Now, commandments of the Quran, they are called nas, plural nasus. Now, there are two types of commands in the Quran. One is amr and one is nahi. You must have heard that verse in which it is mentioned, amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. Amr means to command to do good, and nahi are the commandments ordering to stop bad or stop ills in society. For example, direct nusus from the Quran for worship are like we are commanded to qimu salat, in other words, to establish prayer and pay zakat and perform hajj. Now, Quran for jurisprudence. Other laws are also discussed in the Quran, like financial laws, the laws based on marriage, divorce, and inheritance. For example, financial laws, it is mentioned that whenever you are dealing with a financial dealing in which there is, when you have a large sum of money, then make sure it is written down and you have two witnesses. Marriage, the laws of marriage, who you're allowed to marry, who you are not allowed to marry, and what are the prerequisites for the conditions for your marriage, to pay meher. These things are mentioned. Divorcing is mentioned in the Quran, like it's mentioned that talaqu maratan, that divorce is only two times with a waiting period in which you can uh, do ruju. In other words, you can uh, reconcile with your wife. The 3 months of waiting period will be of 3 menstrual cycles, not just 3 months. This is all mentioned in the Quran. And then if you divorce your wife twice, and then it comes to the third time that you've divorced her, then the waiting period, she will wait in her own home, and you will not be able to reconcile with her. Inheritance is also mentioned in Surah Al-Nisa, in which the portions of the son and the daughter, the father, the mother are mentioned, and the children. All instructions in the Quran regarding above, if one disobeys, it leads to kufr. Whereas you can see that in inheritance, so much disobedience, and in divorce, marriage, financial transactions, so much disobedience is being done regarding these laws. The Quran instructs personal behavior. It instructs personal behavior. That was like communal behavior. Your marriage is a community contract. Your financial dealings is with the community. Now, even personal behavior is also, you get instructions for your personal behavior via the Quran. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu innamal khamru wal maisir wal ansab wal azlamu rijsum min amal shaitan fajtanibuhu la'allakum tuflihun. O believers, intoxicants, gambling, idols, and drawing lots for decisions are all evil of Satan's handiwork. So shun them so you may be successful. Like if you consume intoxications, or if you're gambling, these are all your personal behaviors. Basically, it's associated with one being. So Allah has ordered us that. So if somebody is indulged in this type of activity, then that is haram. Okay, criminal laws are also discussed in the Quran. You'll find multiple things about like stealing, and over here it is mentioned, we ordained for them in the Torah a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a nose for a nose, an ear for an ear, a tooth for a tooth, and for wounds equal retaliation. Now, this is the law of qasas, and naturally it was mentioned in the Torah, also the Old Testaments, and even it is still present in the Quran, that if you kill somebody, the case will be taken to court and you will receive the death penalty. The law of qasas is mentioned in the Quran. Okay, order of lawmaking. Now, what is going to be the initial order of making Islamic law? If we look towards the verse, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu atiyullah wa atiyu rasul, O people who believe, obey Allah and obey His Rasul, wa ulil amri minkum, and the people of authority amongst you. So if you have any problem, you will first consult the Quran, and then you'll consult the Sunnah. If you don't find it in there, then you will consult Ijma. At that time, it was the ijma of the companions. After the companions, it was the ijma of the imams. And likewise, even today, you can face some problems that you need to discuss. Then again, you will take them towards the scholars of Islam. And for example, we are facing many problems today, like vape, and the new robots that are being created to substitute man. The use, how much are we allowed to use them, and how much are we not allowed to use them? Because if anybody heard Elon Musk saying that, I would rather be with a robot, a female robot, than being with a proper human being, because the female robot will be obedient. And vape, it is said, scientists say that vape, if when you take one inhalation of a vape, it's equivalent to inhaling 100 cigarettes. So there should be ijma sat on that also, that is it allowed? Should we declare it haram, or should we, something should be said about some things in the society that are coming in new that have to be dealt with? And then the Quran's relation with the Hadith. This is very important. The Islamic law, in fact, it's near to incomplete without the Hadith. So the Quran's relation with the Hadith is that together the Quran and the Hadith are the primary sources of law. The nas of the Quran cannot be challenged or criticized. For example, if you bring up a Hadith and it's challenging the Quranic verse, it will not be accepted, because the verses of the Quran are absolute and final, and they are the word of Allah. Now, hadith is used to interpret the Quran, in other words, the tafsir. It adds to commandments. The hadith, if the Quran is silent, it will act as a legislator. The hadith also supports the Quran, and the hadith also explains and describes the Quranic verses. Now, authority of hadith to be used as a source of law. قُلْ أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. Now, who has allowed us? Where do we get authority? Where do we get the right to use the hadith as Islamic law? Allah mentions it himself in the Quran, An-Nur 54. Say, "Oh, obey Allah and obey the Messenger." Interpretation of the Quran. The hadith also interprets the Quran. Asbab al-Nuzul, the reason for revelation, the context of revelation. Just like when in English literature, when you have a stanza apart from a poem, then you are asked to write the reference to the context. The interpretation of the Quran, the tafsir of the Quran, is basically it's a reference to the context, that what, where, and when was it revealed. For example, I've given you example of bara'atum min Allahi wa rasulihi illa allazina ahadtum min al-mushrikeen. This is a discharge from all obligations by Allah and His Messenger to the polytheists you believers have entered into treaties with. This is indicating a breach in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, in which Allah then says that now you're free from any treaty because they breached it. And where do we get this information from? As to when it was revealed, we get it from the hadith. Adds to commandments. The hadith also adds to commandments of the Quran. The Quran commands haram. إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ. He has only forbidden you to eat carrion, blood, and swine. Carrion is dead meat. Blood, you know what blood is, and swine is pork or the meat of a pig. The hadith states, to add to a commandment, like adding to this commandment of haram, every predator possessing fangs is forbidden to eat. Now, I've also got you the meaning of fangs, if anybody does not know. A long, sharp tooth, such as one by which an animal's prey is seized and held or torn, like animals like, the tiger, the lion, cats, dogs, hyenas. Okay. When the Quran is silent, the Hadith will act as a legislator. Quran mentions punishment for fornication. Fornication is illegal sexual relation between an unmarried man and an unmarried woman. الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما مئة جلدة. As for the female and male fornicators, give each of them 100 lashes. These are for those who are unmarried. Over here, the reason why they're giving 100 lashes is that they are giving them the benefit of doubt that maybe because they were unmarried, their sexual desire drove them to such an extent that they ended up in illegal sexual intercourse. But for adultery is not mentioned in the Quran, but it is clearly stated in the Hadith that the punishment for adultery is stoning to death, as it is in the Torah also. Hadith mentions the punishment for adultery. This was a very long hadith. I just got you the last part of it. The Prophet says to O Anas, he said to a man from the tribe of Aslam, go to this man's wife, and if she confesses, then stone her to death. Confesses for what? Confesses that she has committed adultery. Unas went to her and she confessed, so he stoned her to death. And remember, why is it stoning to death for adultery? Because adultery means when a married man or a married woman step out of their sacred wedlock, in other words, their sacred contract of nikah. I mean, they had a legal and lawful spouse to fulfill their sexual desire with, but they deliberately, not because of sexual desire, but because of rebellion, basically. You are rebelling from what is the norm, basically. They stepped out of their wedlock and they had a sexual relation with some other person. That is adultery. So that is stoning. The punishment, it adds to the commandment where the Quran is silent, the Hadith acts as a legislator, and over here it is stoning to death. Now the Hadith also supports the Quran. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Do not consume each other's wealth in a wrong way, in batil way. It is, and then the hadith mentions it is unlawful to take property of a Muslim without his consent. So it has supported the same fact that has mentioned in the Quran. The hadith comes and has just given it a support. Okay, and then the hadith explains and describes the Quran. Also, in the Quran, it is mentioned about salah, that wa aqimu salah wa atu zakat, establish prayer. And then in the hadith, we have pray as you see me praying. Now, the ruku formation, the sajda position, the wordings of the whole of the namaz, and the du'as in it are all mentioned in the prophetic hadith. So here we can tell that for establishing Islamic law and even practices of Islam, it is near to impossible without the hadith. I hope I made that clear for you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you.